I ultimately made the man who betrayed me go bankrupt, and it all started with a simple handshake deal to keep my crew employed during the slow season. The year was 2008. For 9 years, I had been running my own landscape company in the Pacific Northwest. I'd done pretty well for myself. I'd bought a house, paid off my student loans, and started a family. During our work season, which ran from March through November, I employed a crew of 4 guys. We focused mainly on maintenance, so once the last of the autumn leaves were picked up, there wasn't much to do. From December to February, we'd typically lay off the crew and go on hiatus. That year, however, things felt different. I'd developed a good working relationship with a home builder, a man I'll call Mr. Harrison. I was already maintaining the grounds of his personal home, and he loved our work. He started asking us to bid on installing the landscapes for the new homes he was building. Now, this wasn't as simple as it sounded. My crew were maintenance experts, not installation specialists, and Mr. Harrison didn't build your average cookie-cutter suburban homes. A small project for him was a 500 square foot house on a massive lot, and his average builds were closer to 10,000 square feet, complete with all the bells and whistles. But he was generous with his landscape budgets, and I was optimistic about our partnership. We successfully completed the first 4 projects he gave us, and just as our maintenance season was ending in early December, he came to me with a proposition. He asked if I'd like to keep my crew working through the winter. His next home wasn't scheduled to break ground until late January, so I asked him what he had in mind. He explained that he and his son, Trevor, had been experimenting with spray foam insulation and had decided to start their own company, purchasing about $100,000 worth of high-end equipment. He was confident he had enough work to keep all 5 of us busy for the next 3 months. I talked it over with my crew, and the following week, we signed a contract for 3 months of work at a specified pay rate. The work started immediately. First, we insulated an incredible house for a plastic surgeon who had spared no expense. Then came government buildings on Fort Lewis, followed by new apartment complexes. While Mr. Harrison owned the insulation company, he was rarely around. His son, Trevor, who was younger than me and a bit of a jerk, was my day-to-day boss. Still, we got along well enough, and everything seemed fine. As a contractor myself, I was used to irregular payment schedules. My maintenance clients paid me once a month, and the money didn't always arrive on time. My crew, however, was used to getting paid promptly. After the first month of insulation work, no check had arrived from my new boss. I asked Trevor when we could expect payment. He assured me that as soon as the checks for the completed job started rolling in, our money would follow. Understanding the cash flow challenges of a new business, I agreed. To keep the peace with my guys, I paid them out of my own pocket, and Trevor and I worked out an agreement where I would track all my expenses, and he would cut me a single check when he could. On top of this, I still had an outstanding landscape invoice for over $10,000 with Mr. Harrison himself, but I wasn't too worried. He wasn't always the quickest to pay, but he always had before. By the end of February 2009, it was time to gear up for the landscaping season. I still hadn't received a dime for the 3 months of insulation work or for that final landscape project, and that's when things got ugly, fast. My daily phone calls to Trevor, whom I no longer saw in person, went unanswered. I tried calling Mr. Harrison, but he more or less ignored me, never offering a straight answer. By mid-April, they had cut off almost all communication. Left with no other choice, I filed a contractor's lien on the landscape project, a legal claim that would have to be paid before the house could be sold. That got a reaction. Mr. Harrison called and invited me to his home for lunch to talk things over. I accepted, thinking that, based on our past history, he was finally going to offer a settlement. I was wrong. We sat down, and he calmly told me that over the years, he'd been screwed out of money by different people, and that it was just a part of business that I was going to have to learn to live with. At that moment, Mr. Harrison made the single biggest mistake of his career, completely unaware that his dismissive words had just unleashed the very person who would dismantle his entire operation. I looked him in the eye. I've been screwed out of money people owe me before, I said, just not by anyone I considered a friend. I left his house, my shock turning into cold determination. I was going to stick it to him. On May 5, 2009, I officially started my own spray foam insulation company, purchasing the same level of equipment he had. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Mr. Harrison, acting as if nothing had happened, asking me a routine landscaping question. "Oh, I don't do landscaping anymore," I told him casually. "I do spray foam." There was a stunned silence. "What are you talking about?" he asked. When I explained that I was now his direct competitor, he ended the call abruptly. 5 minutes later, his son Trevor called, the same son who had ignored me for weeks. He threatened me, yelling that he would destroy my hopes of making it as an insulator and that no little landscaper could ever succeed in this community. The insulation world in the Pacific Northwest is a small circle. At the time, there were only about 4 or 5 companies doing this kind of work. Word gets around fast. Ironically, our very first job was handed to us by our material supplier, who also happened to be their supplier. The job was to fix a botched project. It turned out to be that plastic surgeon's incredible house, the very first job we had worked on for the Harrisons. Apparently, the insulation had been installed incorrectly due to poor workmanship. This revealed the Harrisons' greatest fatal flaw, their arrogance, which made them believe they could enter a highly skilled trade with no real experience and cut corners without consequence. It was a flaw that would ultimately seal their fate. Luckily, my involvement on that original job had only been prep work and cleanup. My new company was hired to remove all of the faulty insulation and reinstall it correctly. It was a $65,000 job, and the homeowner turned around, sued my old boss, and won. Shortly after, we acquired the government contract at Fort Lewis that he'd held. Simply because of his poor communication, we systematically dismantled his company, not with dirty tricks, but by being better and being honest. As one commenter later noted online, "Some people spend a lot of money to take revenge on someone, but you seem to have made a lot of money taking revenge on these guys." The story spread through our small industry, and we became something like local heroes because the Harrisons had burned so many people. Then, the universe delivered the final blow. You might remember that around this time, the housing market took a catastrophic dive. And guess who was left holding 4 massive, unsellable luxury homes? Yep, Mr. Harrison. By the middle of 2009, he was bankrupt. Trevor managed to keep his head above water a little longer, but not for much. In October of that year, I got a call from a repo man. He was looking for Trevor and, more specifically, for his spray foam equipment. As it happens, my father-in-law is a retired cop and private investigator. I put him on the case. 2 days later, he called me with an address and a precise location. The equipment was hidden behind a barn on an island, with the tires aired down. I passed the tip to the repo man. 2 hours later, he called me from his lot, a massive trailer hitched to his truck. He asked where he could send the bounty check. I kept the insulation business for 3 years before another company bought me out. The landscape company? I kept that, and I still run it to this day. The moral of the story is simple. Landscapers might work in the dirt and seem like simple folk, but you should never, ever underestimate them. Piss one off, and they just might ruin you. So, what do you think? Was starting a rival company the ultimate form of justice, or would you have handled the situation differently? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.